Squiz Kids acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands on which we podcast, the Turrbal and Kombumerri people.
Squiz Kids!
It's your daily news fix. Fun, free, fresh.
Hello and welcome to Squiz Kids Today, your fresh take on what's happening in the world around you. I'm Bryce Corbett. It's Monday, July 22. In Squiz Kids Today, inside the global computer crash, big weekend for the moon, good news for panda preservation, and move over the mullet, here comes the perm. That's what's making news, kids style.
The Lowdown.
Supermarkets, airlines, TV stations and work computers all over the world were back up and running over the weekend after a global IT crash late on Friday afternoon, which showed just how reliant we all are on computers and technology. In what was the biggest global computer crash in decades, more than 8.5 million computers around the world went blank on Friday afternoon, after a cybersecurity update went a little bit wrong. Airports were thrown into chaos as check-in systems crashed, long queues started forming in supermarkets as checkout registers stopped working, and some TV and radio stations were forced to go off air because their systems too had died. Luckily, the problem was identified quickly, and within hours for the most part, those clever people who fix IT systems swung into action to fix the problem. And while the problem was an innocent enough tech issue, there were warnings over the weekend for us all to have our newshounds magnifying glasses at the ready in the next few days, because fraudsters were likely to try to exploit the situation and launch what are called cyber scams off the back of the meltdown. A cyber scam is when someone sends emails or makes phone calls trying to trick people out of their money. And so, a good reminder to be good news hounds this week and make sure to tell your parents and grandparents to be on high alert. And then there was snow, and lots of it. As Tasmania, South Australia and our friends in the ACT return to school this week, it will be against the backdrop of a big dump of snow on the Aussie ski fields. Reports from ski resorts in Victoria over the weekend said that up to 50 centimetres of the white fluffy stuff had fallen over Friday night and into Saturday, creating perfect conditions for snow lovers. Meanwhile, it was a balmy 30 degrees in Darwin yesterday. How good is Australia?
Spin the globe.
Each day we give the world globe a spin and find a news story from wherever it stops. And today we've landed on the moon, which I know is not technically on planet Earth, but work with me on this one. And the reason we've landed on the moon is to mark a special occasion there. Yesterday marked the 55th anniversary of humans landing on the moon for the very first time. Out of a tiny spaceship 55 years ago, or a lunar lander as it was called, a man called Neil Armstrong climbed slowly down a ladder and stepped onto the surface of the moon, calling it
one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And the reason that this is all back in focus is because multiple countries around the world are right now busy making plans to not only have astronauts walk on the moon again, but also eventually establish a permanent human base on the moon, where people would live and work. Whoa! So, take a look up at the moon tonight, which is very happily in full moon mode, and think about how amazing science is, and how wonderful the possibilities of human existence and the universe are, and imagine what life might one day be like for those of us who live on the moon. Amazing.
Animal Kingdom.
Remember in the podcast about a month ago, we talked about the visit to Australia by a Chinese leader, and how Adelaide Zoo was home to a pair of pandas on loan to us from their natural habitat in China. Well, there's evidence now that as well as providing a super cute attraction at Adelaide Zoo, having the giant pandas in a zoo here in Australia is doing wonders for getting them off the endangered species list. A report over the weekend suggests the giant panda numbers in the wild have grown to 1,900, up from about 1,100 back in the 1980s. And some of that success has to do with the conservation efforts of zoos around the world, who provide homes to the super cute species and take part in breeding programs to help the pandas have babies. I've stuck a link in today's episode notes to a cute National Geographic video of baby pandas, and an explanation of how breeding programs are helping to make sure planet Earth preserves them. Oh, there goes the classroom companion Clarion, telling us that our very own primary school teacher, Christy, has crafted an exciting worksheet on evaluative language, all centred around the fascinating world of panda diplomacy. Whether you think it's fantastic, terrible, brilliant, or chaotic, dive into the Squiz Kids Classroom Companion and elevate your language skills today. And teachers, you can hop on in by going to the Squiz Kids website or searching for Squiz Kids Classroom Companion in your favourite search engine. You're welcome.
Pop Culture Corner.
And it's a retro edition of Pop Culture Corner this Monday, as we celebrate the return of the perm, and some startling news from Hello Kitty. Starting with the perm, and it appears that the curly hairdo is making a comeback, with hairdressers all over Australia reporting that perms are on their way back into fashion. Now, perm is short for permanent, which is a chemical process that turns straight hair curly. But get this, it's not girls who are coming into salons and requesting perms, it's boys. According to some hair trend spotters, the perm may soon replace the mullet as the stylish hairdo of choice amongst Aussie men. I'm not sure I've got the head of hair for either of those. And in other retro-inspired pop culture news, you've heard of Hello Kitty, right? She celebrates her 50th birthday this year, which is pretty good for a cat. Except that in news that has surprised her millions of fans all over the world, her creators this weekend revealed that she is not in fact a cat, but a little girl, who weighs 3 apples and stands 5 apples tall, none of which makes very much sense to me. Clearly, they're not familiar with the old expression, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck.
Time for the quiz.
This is the part of the podcast where you get to test how well you've been listening. Question number 1. How many years ago did humans first walk on the moon? Did you say 55? Well done to you. Question number 2. Which country is the natural habitat of giant pandas? Yes, of course, it's China. Question number 3. Which hairstyle is making a comeback among Aussie men? Yeah, well done if you said the perm.
Shout-outs.
It's Monday, July 22. As I've mentioned, it's the first day back of Term 3 for our friends in South Australia, Tassie and the ACT. Nice to have you back, guys. Hope you enjoyed your holidays, and here's to a successful Term 3. It's also a special day for these Squiz Kids, celebrating a birthday today and tomorrow. Benedict from Atwell, Dylan from Neerim South, Tatum from Unanderra, Olive from Camaray, Ivy from South Brisbane, Jack from Dalby, Casey from Currumbine, Amos from Goodna, Annalise from South Brisbane, Harry from Eltham, Sailor from Grovedale, Judah from Glen Iris, Evan from Footscray, Hugh and Arush from Forest Lake, and Jason from Pacific Pines. And belated birthday shout-outs to go to Tyler from Thursday Island, Xavier from Goodna, Sarah from Sydney, and John from Queensland. And ladies and gents, we're back to classroom shout-outs for the term. Will your classroom be among the lucky ones getting a shout-out this term? Well, don't just sit there. Send in a request, quick sticks. Today's classroom shoutouts go to Prep A and Mrs. Marini at Glen Huntley Primary School, Class 8S and Mr. Litchfield at Windsor High School, all of the students at Mandama Primary School, Class 4C and Mrs. Karthik at Rockhampton Grammar School, Class 5, 6F and Mrs. F at Glenbrook Public School, and the Learning Centre with Mrs. McKinnon at Sacred Heart College in Newtown, Hobart. Don't forget, if you've got a birthday coming up and you want a shout out, or if you're after a classroom shout out, drop us a line at squizkids@thesquiz.com.au or fill out the form on our website. Well, that's all we have time for. Thanks for listening to Squiz Kids today. We'll be back again tomorrow with a Squiz Kids shortcut that I'm super excited about, a shortcut on the ancient Olympics. All the history of the big sporting event, stretching back to its origins in ancient Greece, with some surprising facts, including how one athlete came into the stadium of the ancient Olympics carrying a cow, and what he did with it next you will not believe. In the meantime, though, my friends, get out there and have a most excellent day. Over and out.